pleasant day to all and welcome to the parallel session of Rec 9 and 10 on Mathematics, Science Communication, and Public Health Governance. So public health is critical to ensuring and empowering the well-being of societies. And in this session, the talks will present how mathematics, statistics, and computer science are used as critical tools to understand, study, and solve overflowing information and problems of our society, and use this as a tool to design or modify public health governance policies. To start this session, our keynote speaker is a full professor at the University of the Philippines, Mindanao, a UP Scientist 1, and is currently the program leader of the Center Applied Modeling, Data Analytics, and Bioinformatics for Decision Support Systems in Health. Without further ado, let us all welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. May Ann Mata.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm on mobile data right now. It's just so unfortunate that we had LOS in my modem, but it's okay. Anyway, so I'd like to greet everyone here. Very good morning. I am very grateful for your presence today, even though there are only a very few of us here in this room. But I still like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event, especially to Dr. Lau for inviting me to give a keynote talk under this Rec 9 and 10 parallel session. As your keynote speaker, I have pondered on a good topic to talk about that aligns with this parallel session. And speaking from experience, I am excited to share with you my thoughts on the critical need of having quantitatively adept experts to improve our public health governance in the Philippines. Therefore, this title, From Numbers to Impact, the critical need for data scientists, mathematicians, and computer scientists in improving public health governance. Let me start by telling you what my talk will be about. First, I'll talk about how public health is managed in the Philippines. And then I'll tell you how important it is to have data experts to improve public health management. And then I'll give you some examples of how mathematicians, data scientists, and computer scientists in our country have worked together to make a success, just like it's like a proof of concept. And then I'll tell you what I think about building the skills of data experts and how we can win through long-term relationships and collaborations. Lastly, I will end my talk with a positive outlook and a look ahead to a bright future. Public health governance is essential to global health. It involves making informed choices, following facts-based rules, and optimizing resources. In the Philippines, we know that the main governing body for public health is the Department of Health, or DOH. So what you're seeing here on the screen is the organizational chart of the DOH management teams, and it shows numerous functions and offices. I think it's kind of obvious, no, that each office has its own dynamics and mess. But in this presentation, I'd like to highlight this aspect of field implementation and coordination, particularly those associated with regional DOH offices or Center for the Health Development, so that the acronym there is CHDs. Why? Because these regional offices oversee the region's health situation, and they're the ones that collaborate and coordinate closely with local health offices, local hospitals, and the public to execute DOH guidelines and actions. And so if you come to think of it, these regional offices, or these CHDs, they play a critical role in fulfilling the vision of DOH of making Filipinos be among the healthiest people in Asia by 2040, as well as its mission to lead the country in the development of a productive, resilient, equitable, and people-centered health systems for universal health care. Although the vision and mission, as you can see there, it's very well crafted. I think the CHD's capacity to effectively work along with this vision and mission at the regional scale is constrained by the availability of their manpower and resources. For instance, when making choices about how to manage diseases, these CHDs typically use minimal data from surveillance. How did I say that? Let me give you an example. On the left, you can see the recently posted DOH circular memo about making sure measles and rubella are being managed. So you're seeing there a text in the red box on the left. Basically, the text says that CHDs are given an objective to reduce the number of measles and rubella cases, and that's just based on the projected human population. But this doesn't tell us or tell the CHDs how many people should be vaccinated to make sure that the target is met. On the right, you can see a letter from the regional head of DOH Davao CHD to our former department chair. That was the time during the pandemic times. And in that letter, the RD Humang essentially asked for my assistance in predicting COVID-19 cases and analyzing their data. Essentially, this was their response when they saw an alarming rise in the number of confirmed positive COVID-19 cases during the time. So it's clear from these examples that CHDs don't have a lot of knowledge or tools, and when the needs arise, they have to call on experts in the academe to do in-depth analysis of their data. But in the fast-paced and connected world we live in now, we need to go beyond standard methods and use the power of data to make real changes. One current trend in public health governance is to have a center that focuses on using disease data to make better decisions about how to respond to outbreaks and control diseases. One example of that is the CDC's Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics. This center was actually launched in 2022 as a national resource that can identify disease threats, model how these diseases might spread, and quickly alert public health officials to help them make better decisions when responding to an outbreak. And you know what I've discovered or what I've noticed, if we look at the websites of DOH and CDCs, there is a big difference in how public health governance in the Philippines treats numerical and quantitative information about health risks. Interestingly, there is no information on the DOH website where you can directly know the number of outbreaks, a summary of disease data, or some important figure or disease figure or health-related figure about the country. And if you want to find this information, it is very challenging because you have to dig deeper and look for other websites, or you can just directly coordinate with the CHDs, which really take a lot of time. I hope that the new DOH administration is considering adding data, statistics, and information about disease outbreaks to the website. But of course, if that's what they intend to do or what we want to do, we need to let data experts do what they do best. So who are these experts on data? Well, these are mathematicians, data scientists, computer scientists, with special skills that let them turn raw data into useful insights. Their analytical skills and advanced ways of using computers will allow them to find hidden patterns, spot new trends, and model complicated public health systems. Now, the pandemic highlighted disease data experts in the Philippines. If you remember faster, they built the DOH COVID-19 tracker. You might have heard of Octa Research, no, who predicted the NCR COVID-19 cases, UP COVID-19 pandemic response, and the IAM lab. These teams undertake a variety of COVID-19 modeling under different interventions, tailored according to the local and regional setting, and they convey their modeling results to the public efficiently and effectively. And of course, the Philippine Genome Center, which helps us investigate variants of concerns circulating across the nation. The MOCOS Philippines of MSU-IIT, they performed micro-simulation model for COVID-19 pandemic analysis in Mindanao. And finally, the NICER Amdabids Health. This is the team that I've led since 2021, where we provided technical guidance on pandemic control and management using modeling, data analytics, and bioinformatics to Mindanaoan DOH regional offices and local health offices. As a matter of fact, this AMDABID's Health Nicer Center, we've been sending weekly situational reports to different CHDs in Mindanao. You might wonder what the reports contain. These reports essentially have GIS-generated maps of epidemiological metrics, 14-day predictions of COVID-19 cases and deaths, that's per city or per municipality, local time-dependent reproduction numbers, and other baseline disease rates and metrics. These reports were used to help them plan their COVID-19 actions in a strategic way. Well, prior to the groups I've mentioned earlier, I believe that there were already data experts who have paved their way through health research. But at this juncture, I would like to illustrate practical applications of combining knowledge of mathematicians, data scientists, and computer scientists in generating tangible solutions to empower decision makers. Specifically, I'm going to draw an example from my rabies research experience that was funded by CHED and the OSTPCHRD, wherein a team of data experts in Davao City worked together for improving the operations of Davao City Veterinarian Office in dealing with the city's rabies situation. From our rabies research studies that we conducted in 2018 to 2020, we found that dog rabies still persists in the city, despite the intensive interventions implemented by the city veterinarian office. And these findings really matter to CVO because they are one of the decision makers and implementers in controlling rabies in the city to contribute to this worldwide goal of zero human rabies by 2030. And so to help CVO make informed decisions in controlling rabies in the city, the team decided to propose a rabies project to the OST. And while we were brainstorming on the proposal, we realized a lot of things. We realized that CVO lacks resources to effectively monitor or track rabies because during the time, they keep track of rabies manually, just using pen and paper. They have very limited manpower. Actually, they only have one statistician who can delve into the analysis of rabies data and their interventions. They are having difficulty in the analysis simply because of underreporting as well. And so it became apparent from our coordination with CVO that the rabies monitoring strategy was inefficient, meaning to say, CVO needs a reliable surveillance data and a tool that will assist them in their decision-making, especially when they're doing strategic planning for implementing their interventions. And so our DOST proposal, which later on was approved, focused on developing a system for CVO to use to keep track and monitor rabies in the city. And we did that using combined mathematical and genomic approaches. Okay, so just to contribute reliable rabies surveillance data, we performed genome sequencing of rabies strains from dog samples to provide high-resolution understanding of local viral spread, particularly the viral evolution and its circulation in the city. And then we used mathematical models to come up with estimates of epidemiological parameters affecting rabies spread. We also assessed the impact of the interventions of implemented by CVO using statistical and spatial regression analysis. And then out from all this analysis, we integrated them and into a dashboard. So this dashboard simply lets CVO enter or modify data and view reports. So the dashboard also acts like a bridge that will simplify our analysis and recommendations to CVO for them to use. At the moment, we are still improving the dashboard to incorporate a functionality where CVO can determine the barangays it should focus on in their interventions for a specific period of time, and then get a sense of the projected rabies cases if they don't apply the interventions immediately. But even if we are still developing it, the existing dashboard are still being used by them now. So we also noticed that stakeholders' contact became increasingly important as we developed the dashboard. The CVO actively provided dashboard feedback during beta testing. Most beta testers found the dashboard intuitive and well integrated. And we improved the dashboard usability using the comments of the beta testers. And after we incorporated the feedback from beta testing, we conducted a soft launching of the dashboard and users training. The dashboard was attended by all CVO encoders, And essentially what we did was train them how to use the analytics dashboard, including some suggestions on what graphs to include when they are proposing a budget to the city government, just to strengthen their intervention implementation. And until today, the CVO, just like what I said earlier, the CVO utilizes the dashboard for their planning, and they continue to populate the dashboard's database. One good news about this dashboard is that one of the heads of Davao CVO, particularly she's the Davao CVO Research and Lab Division Chief, Dr. Supalveda. She commended our work, and she said that the team's output on surveillance has even inspired them to exert more effort for dog census in the city, because they realize that it will surely help them set annual vaccination targets accurately. And CVO showed their appreciation to our rabies research team recently on March 8 during the Pasidungog 2023 Garbo sa Davao. It's a major Araw ng Davao event. The city government recognized our tireless support of Davao City's animal health, welfare, and production programs. Our work with the CVO to make Davao City rabies-free was indeed recognized. And this award simply shows how our research has affected the city, pushing us to keep discovering ways to reduce rabies until it is eradicated. And in addition to that, the city pet advocates enlisted our team in founding the Davao Alliance for Better Animal Welfare, or DABAW, to support their request to tighten pet ownership laws. And what you're seeing in the slide is just a position paper that contains our rabies studies to support the advocacy. And by the way, this position paper was included in the privileged speech of one of the councilors of Davao City to champion this advocacy of responsible pet ownership. So capacity building. Capacity building is necessary for the success story that I told you. Data scientists, mathematicians, and computer scientists in the Philippines need capacity building for interdisciplinary health research in order for their potential to be maximized. And I believe that this can be accomplished with targeted education, training, and government industry partnerships. Workshops like the International Workshop on Mathematical Biology, or IWOMB. This was actually organized by Filipino biomathematicians. Dr. Lau is one of the organizers of this workshop. Such workshops like this can help get people interested in interdisciplinary research that uses data science, math, and computational tools to solve complex problems in biological systems. And of course, when you talk about biological systems, health systems can be a subset of that. In fact, for the IWOMB next month, the theme says harnessing infectious disease modeling for societal benefit. Again, this is just one example of a way to build people's skills and get mathematicians, data scientists, and computer scientists interested in using advanced methods to help improve our health systems. But despite producing expertise, strengthening public health governance is still difficult. Obviously, we have resource expert, infrastructural, administrative, and technological constraints. But with continued engagement and collaborations between educational institutions, government agencies, industry professionals, and local communities, I believe we can overcome these difficulties. And I've seen how partnerships and collaborations may mitigate epidemics using quantitative techniques as the program leader of AMDABIS Health. By the way, this program is coming to an end very soon. Although the funding has stopped for the moment, we are still pushing for sustained collaborations with our partner agencies. And to achieve this, what we did was to establish the center to be under the UP Resilience Institute in order to help sustain the R&D activities. So another thing is that we took a further step of rebranding the center to Mindanao Center for Disease Watch and Analytics, or DWAC Center, in order to reflect that the fact that this center is developing this so-called DIWA app. Again, DIWA stands for Disease Watch and Analytics. What is this DIWA app? This is a web-based application, virtual planning tool, and integrative platform to empower decision makers for disease management in Mindanao. So in this app, what we did was we built our own mathematical models and ways for looking at the data. So this lets the app really do its job in terms of the analytics. So we have the descriptive analytics aspect of the app as shown on the spatiotemporal maps on the top left. We have the diagnostic analytics aspect, like the one shown on the upper right. The one shown on the upper right is really just showing you how far the variants of concern circulating in the area have spread. And then the third, we have the predictive analytics aspect to predict how the disease will spread. That's shown on the lower left. And fourth is to suggest ways to manage the disease effectively. So this is where the prescriptive analytics aspect comes in. And that's shown by the case for a vaccine rollout system on the lower right. So the vaccine rollout system actually gives automatic lists of when vaccinations will be given and where vaccine stations will open. Another thing that I have to point out is that the app was soft launched to the public last November and will resume its development as soon as we receive the additional funds. So the innovation that I just shared earlier is an illustration of a bright future. The DIWA Center is an important entity because it helps increase job opportunities for not just STEM graduates, but even STEAM graduates. It gives timely and enhanced relevant information, and it provides sustainable solutions that are aligned nationally and globally. And with the DIWA Center under UP at the moment, the low-hanging fruit is to demonstrate our benefits directly to Mindanao stakeholders as we reach out to more disease managers and improve our physical and digital infrastructure to have a centralized disease analytics system. I believe this DIWA Center will become an autonomous first-of-its-kind center that allows mathematicians, data scientists, and computer scientists to collaborate with communication, medicine, and even engineering experts with the same goal of improving public health governance. And since we have a center that demands numerically capable personnel, I believe more educational institutions would be encouraged or would encourage next generation learners to excel in math and science to keep up with the global trends. And hopefully one day DIWA will be listed on the DOH website, like the CDC statistics and information about outbreaks, or it could look like one of the attached agencies of the Department of Health, like the CDC's Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics. I am optimistic that this wish is not far from coming true. Anyway, in conclusion, I put it in here. Data scientists, mathematicians, and computer scientists are the unsung heroes of public health governance. Their analytical, computational, and data-driven ideas can save lives, influence policy, and improve the future. And just like the broken objects that you're seeing on the AI-generated photo on the right, public health governance will remain crooked if we do not realize the critical need for data scientists, mathematicians, and computer scientists in improving our health systems. Unfortunately, this means we run the risk of losing the very essence and potential of our disease and other health-related data. We must all do everything we can to ensure that future generations are not left uninformed by the discoveries made in these revolutionary fields. Together, with the data-driven DREAM team, we can revolutionize public health governance, making it impactful, effective, and community responsive. Daghang salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mata. Any questions from the audience? The floor is now open for Q&A. Yes, Dr. Lim.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Mata, for the wonderful talk. I'm just wondering, currently you're associated with DOH, and so many of the interventions that are shown in the dashboards are mainly pharmaceutical related. So how do you envision expanding this to non-pharmaceutical related interventions, which now would require interactions with, I guess, with other agencies? Occupational safety and health is in a different silo. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I actually didn't show earlier the non-pharmaceutical interventions. We actually included that in our forecast because this talk was not so technical. But yes, we started with non-pharmaceutical interventions. We also have module for agent-based simulation for COVID-19, just to also incorporate that aspect. But with in terms of forecasting, we already included that in our model and then make some adjustments. The thing that people should understand is that at this point, we cannot do automated forecasting for diseases. We still need human touch in terms of the analysis because we're using compartmental model when we're doing model fitting for models with interventions. But yes, clearly we have ways to incorporate non-pharmaceutical interventions. And for pharmaceutical interventions, maybe we have vaccination, that's one thing. But I think in the future, when there are more, say, medicines available for COVID-19, hopefully when that happens, we can also include that as well. But as I said, the DIWA app is like a one-stop shop for disease managers, wherein if they're interested, for example, interested in doing resource allocation, they have a module for that. When they're interested in managing risks, they have a module for that. When they're interested in improving the triaging, we have a module for that. So essentially, we have that kind of system. And at this point, we're still young, no, in building the system. But the good thing is that it's already functional. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Dr. Lin.
Thank you for that. But may I ask a follow-up question related to that? So how I guess this would be applicable to others who would be interested in going into this reaching out to the various LGUs or various agencies. Could you tell us a bit more about your experience with DOH and how do you think could it be replicated with other agencies that, for example, I guess Department of Labor or would be the one would be concerned more of with the non-NPIs. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so my experience with DOH, the good thing is that they were the ones who approached us and asked assistance with us. But I think I have to also mention some ethical considerations, like we have to come up with memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding. So we have to have this legal bindings, non-disclosure agreement in terms of the data and even data sharing agreement, ensuring that the data that we will process will only stay with us. And then we have weekly reports to DOH. So we keep sending these reports usually via email. At this point, they can just download the weekly report, in the app or from the app. So that's one thing. And I would say that coordination really takes a bulk of your time when you're working with this. So if you want to have faster communication, you can hire a liaison officer under your project to do all the coordination, because as I said, that really takes time. And whenever you do all this legal documents, you have to ensure that these documents are notarized, no, before you proceed with the analysis. So yeah, in terms of how active DOH in sending the data, it really depends on the data managers of DOH. In Davao CHD, they're very active in terms of sending the data to us, like they do it on a regular basis, weekly. For Northern Mindanao, they do it somewhat regularly because there are times that they cannot send it on time, like every week. Zamboanga, yes, they're also regular, but for others, sometimes you can't expect them to be that regular, frequent when they're sending the data. So that's really one of the problems. But I think with my experience, we just do more nudging and communicating via phone calls and things like that. But I've been telling the RD, DOST regional director here in Davao to help us with the coordination and make things faster for us. I think it also helps if you coordinate with the regional directors of DOST, because they can assist you in coordinating with these offices. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Due to time constraint, no, this will be the last question. But Dr. Mata, your work is really excellent, no? And we all know that's very difficult to work with the government and all the documents, processing all those things, no? So for you to reach this point, no, you have been gone through a lot, no, and able to accomplish all of what you have done. Congratulations, no? So to award the certificate, let me flash the certificate.
Okay. So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. May Ann Mata in a grateful acknowledgement for imparting her valuable knowledge and insights as a keynote speaker in the 2023 annual PAASE meeting and symposium, with the theme Reimagining the Training of the 21st Century STEAM Workforce, held from June 26 to July 1st, 2023, signed by Dr. Mariano Santo Domingo and Dr. Sinya Tigno.
Okay, congratulations, and thank you, Dr. Mata. For our next speaker, he is a full professor at the University of the Philippines, Baguio, and currently the chapter president of the Mathematical Society of the Philippines, CAR Region 1 and 2 chapter. Without further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Jerico Bacani.
Thank you, Professor Angeline Lau, for that kind introduction. Let me share my slide. Can you see the slides, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you to the organizers of APAMS 2023. Thank you, PAASE, for this opportunity. Again, good morning. Actually, I'm not aware that the session should be about presenting researches that are relevant to public health. But what we submitted is about a STEM-related research. So before I show my slides, so since I'll be sharing about Diophantine equations, let me begin with some applications of these Diophantine equations in public health. So when we say Diophantine equations, these are usually algebraic equations, mostly polynomial equations that seek integer solutions. So Diophantine equations may not appear to have an immediate connection to public health. However, mathematical models and techniques, including Diophantine equations, play a significant role in various aspects of public health research and practice. So with the help of AI, I want to share with you some ways in which Diophantine equations are relevant to public health. So for instance, in disease modeling and in epidemiology, mathematical models are crucial in understanding the spread and dynamics of infectious diseases. So Diophantine equations can be used to represent and analyze the discrete nature of disease transmission. So they help in determining the critical thresholds for disease eradication, identifying optimal vaccination strategies, and estimating the impact of control measures. In statistical analysis, so in public health research, statistical analysis is fundamental for studying the relationship between various factors and health outcomes. So Diophantine equations can be used in statistical models to represent discrete and integer variables. So they contribute to the development and robust statistical methods for analyzing public health data, such as regression models, population projections, etc. Last but not least, for instance, in optimization problems, Diophantine equations play a role in optimization problems relevant to public health. For example, in resource allocation and planning, they help find optimal solutions for distributing limited resources, such as vaccines or medical supplies, to maximize population health benefits. So in summary, while the direct application of Diophantine equations in public health may not be evident, their underlying mathematical principles and techniques have a significant impact. Hoping that in our future research, we can contribute to public health research and practice. So now, actually, my talk is titled on the solutions of Diophantine equations that involve triangular numbers. So these are joint work with Sir Lambert Quesada, Melda Canumay, Aljon Buco, Christian David, Beverly Ngawi, and Melanie Unida. Okay, and this research was done in 2021-2022 during the intensive training on mathematical investigation and modeling project of the Department of Education. So just to give you a brief history, okay, about this project. So DepEd is actually planning to implement a mathematical investigation and modeling curriculum to be included in DepEd's special science program for STEM. And they conducted this intensive training last July 2021, and for a period of initially 5 months, but extended to 8 months. So a team of highly qualified teachers from regions 1, 2, and 3, CAR and NCR was created. And Luzon MIM team is the name of our team. And the team, as I said, it was joined by the VCD staff, Ma'am Melanie Unida of DepEd. So the team worked on 2 projects, one MI project under my supervision, and mathematical modeling project under the guidance of Dr. Jomar Rabahante of UP LB. So the title of the MI project is Fair and Squares. And what are the activities of the team? So for the first 4 months, we had online workshops on MI and MI tasks, and in the last 4 months, then we had our research study, and we did research on square numbers and triangular numbers. So what is a square number? So a square number, or perfect square, is an integer that can be expressed as a product of 2 equal integers. So like 1, because it's 1 squared, 4, 2 squared, 9, 3 squared, something like that. And so these are the square numbers. And visually, here, for instance, using vertices of squares, and these figures can be obtained, using these grid points. And if you count the grid points of these squares, then we can generate the square numbers. And surprisingly, for instance, in the discussion in pre-calculus or calculus course, for like these rational expression. This rational expression can be written as this infinite series. And surprisingly, the coefficients are indeed square numbers. Then some interesting results on square numbers that we look into. For instance, this one, the square of an even number is even, square of an odd number is odd. So while revisiting this, of course, we did some investigative tasks, okay, during our regular consultations. Then the teacher participants, okay, made conjectures, and we proved using different techniques of proving. So, for instance, that one, number two, say the last two digits of the square of a number ending in 5 is 25. The square of binomial is twice their product and added to the square of each term, and so on and so forth. So some investigative tasks are given to teacher participants like this one, okay? That when you square a number ending in 5, it ends with 25. So we made an investigative task to have an exploration and eventually made conjecture. So most of the members use spreadsheet in doing some explorations or some experiments. Then after that, they had their conjectures, and they were guided in providing formal proof to conjectures. Another one, the popular Pythagorean theorem, for instance. So we can have this activity having 4 identical triangles, labeled the sides A, B, and C being the longest side. Then we let them to make 2 types of squares whose sides are A and B, and they do their own investigation. Then, of course, they ended up with this conjecture, which is, as we all know, this already well established result. Okay, we have this a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, where a, b, and c are the sides of this right triangle. And this one way wherein we demonstrated proving by construction. So we have this geometric proof. So we let them form, say, figures. Okay, so having these 4 triangles having the same shape, and from this they will notice that here, so we have they form a square with side a plus b, and another square, of course, having the same side a plus b, and they generated a square with side c, and 2 squares, 2 smaller squares with sides a squared, b squared. But since these two, okay, have sides a plus b, so from that they can conclude that what c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. Then of course we discussed the concept of Pythagorean quadruple, just an extension of the Pythagorean triple. And some known Pythagorean quadruples are these. Then another one, for instance, that the sum of odd numbers is actually a perfect square. So to visualize this concept, so again, we have this activity, drawing a 10 by 10 grid with equal cells. Color first the square at the leftmost bottom, using a different color, shade the next square surrounding the first square, and so on and so forth. Then they again do investigation. So from that, okay, they can generate this conjecture. Okay, so a geometric proof, okay, which can be easily visualized. So from here, so one, then make 3 more squares surrounding one. Okay, but when you add 1 and 3, then actually from here you can see that it's indeed a square. Then you do the process repeatedly, so the square becomes bigger and bigger. But from here you can see that if you are just adding odd numbers, then what we are really generating is a square. Then we are taught, as I said, different types of proof, and one of the proofs that we shared to them is the principle of mathematical induction. Okay, so from this or from that training, so they learned how to prove a formula using mathematical induction. Then the group tried to prove also other conjectures, such as having this activity that when they get the product of 4 consecutive integers and add 1, and they'll end up again with a square number. And we have other conjectures. But of course, due to limited time, some of the conjectures were not proven rigorously. Such as, okay, so for instance, if you have an odd prime is not equal to 5, okay, so using Excel, okay, they showed that this expression p squared plus 1 or p squared minus 1 is indeed divisible by 10. But they need higher knowledge on mathematics, especially number theory, to prove such. Then for the last 4 months, we had this research study, okay, on square numbers, okay, related to triangular numbers. So what's the motivation of the group? So for instance, this figure, so we have a geometry that links triangular numbers with square numbers. What? So what are the triangular numbers? As I showed earlier, so these are the numbers. I will be showing it later, but these are the numbers 1, 3, 6, 10, etc. And these numbers can be seen from these figures, shaded black, but also square number can also be obtained from here. Such as we have the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 is a square number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9 again is a square number, etc. So there's a connection, okay, between the triangular numbers and the square numbers. But the paper that the group studied was this paper, okay, by Junior Peng. Linear combination of 2 triangular numbers is a perfect square, and they had in this paper actually the strategies, okay, involved are very difficult to understand, but the group managed to extend the paper in such a way that, or so that we could have a research study on research result on this. And several lemmas are very crucial in the study of the group. So the concepts needed in the study, like what I've said, so Diophantine equations, okay, and Pell's equation, which is also a Diophantine equation, square numbers, triangular numbers. So I already defined a Diophantine equation earlier. So it is just a polynomial equation. So this is the classical definition of Diophantine equation, polynomial equation in one or more variables that is to be solved in integers. But now we have more unknown seeking for rational solutions. So we have now researchers that we are not necessarily they are seeking for integer solutions, but rational solutions as well. So it is named after Diophantus of Alexandria. Okay. Sorry, what happened? Buksan ko yung chat. Okay, and famous Diophantine equation actually is the Fermat's last theorem. So we have a very simple equation, x raised to n plus y raised to n equals z raised to n, but it was only proven after 350 years of conjecturing. So every time we study Diophantine equations, so we study existence of solutions, types of solutions, and also finitude or infinitude of solutions, among others. And Diophantine equations are classified as linear or nonlinear. Linear, okay, ax plus by equals c, no, sikat na sikat when we were in high school or in college. And for nonlinear, as long as we cannot write in this form, then we have nonlinear Diophantine equations, and these are several types of nonlinear Diophantine equations. So these are also examples of Diophantine equations, nonlinear, and they are classified as exponential Diophantine equations because of the variable exponents. And we have the Pell equation of this form, where d is an integer which is not a perfect square. Then for triangular numbers, so these are the numbers, okay, in this sequence, which can be obtained using this formula, x taken 2 or x choose 2, which is equal to x times x minus 1 all over 2, for x greater than or equal to 2. And some classical results on triangular numbers. So this one, John proved that no triangular number except one is a cube or 4 powers. So any triangular number, for instance, 3, 6, you cannot write as a raised to 3, where a is an integer. And Gauss showed that every natural number is sum of at most 3 triangular numbers. And also Euler determined infinitely many triangular numbers which are perfect squares, like 1, 36, etc. So the main result of the study is this. Suppose there exist, okay, non-negative integers S and T such that these equations are true. So this condition or this condition, then this equation, okay, has infinitely many non-negative integer solutions with xy greater than or equal to 2. Okay. So how did we prove this? We first consider what if m and n are both 0. Then this equation can be simplified into this. And so we can write z is equal to plus or minus 1. So if m and n are both 0, there are infinitely many integer solutions of this form, and including the case xy greater than or equal to 2. We have this condition because of the definition of a triangular number using that formula x taken 2, which is equal to x times x minus 1 all over 2. What if m is 0 or n is 0, but not both are 0? So that equation that we are considering can be reduced into this or into this equation. But both equations have infinitely many positive integer solutions based on the paper that we read by Junyao Peng. So crucial, what if m and n are both greater than 0? So without lots of generality, we regroup the left-hand side of equation 1. Na-regroup namin na ganito because of some illustrations. But of course, we can have 1 plus mx2 plus ny choose 2 is equal to z squared. So from the paper of Peng, we know that this can be a square number, and we let that to be this. So for some positive integer alpha. Also note that this expression is a positive integer. So thus we can always find a positive integer m that can be multiplied to this expression to make it a perfect square. So we let also beta squared to be equal to this product, where beta is a positive integer. So now we have this equal to z squared, which can now be written as a quadratic equation, alpha squared plus beta squared is equal to z squared. But we have that assumption with that involves s and t. And you can show that, okay, we can write alpha to be this difference and beta to be this 1. And it should follow that z be equal to s squared plus t squared by algebraic manipulation. And this would mean that alpha, beta, and z is a Pythagorean triple, but there are infinitely many Pythagorean triples. So there exist infinitely positive integer solutions of this equation. And we combine all these arguments and we get the desired result. So just a simple illustration. So for instance, we think about the Pythagorean triple 3, 4, 5. So we know that this ordered pair 5 is a solution of this equation. Okay. because, of course, they satisfy that equation. On the other hand, this pair is a solution to this equation because, of course, they satisfy the equation. So we have z squared equals 25, and we have z is equal to 5, and so we have this solution 35335. And we can do the same thing for Pythagorean triples, say 5, 12, 13, and we can show that the solution to the equation that we are considering is this quintuple. So we have various illustrations or examples for that, and we tried to extend this to by adding another expression. So, for instance, this, and by having some explorations, okay, it seems that, okay, we have infinitely many integer solutions. Then we have other conjectures. Okay, what if we have k plus 1 term, okay, satisfying this equation? We can also have, we can find non-negative integer solutions to this. And lastly, we have this conjecture. So major references is this by Bastow and company, and by Jope, and also the sources that for the figures. We'd like to promote our graduate programs in UP Baguio, hoping that you can, or you have colleagues or friends who want to become mathematicians, then try to explore these programs in our campus. Thank you, po.
Thank you, Dr. Bacani. Questions from the audience? Yes, Dr. Lin.
Yes, thank you very much for this very nice visual talk on.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, is it possible to act this, because I couldn't help but think that this has some relation to creating unique solutions to tiles. As in, you can create patterns on tiling with this kind of solution that tells you. And so, how would it? I mean, I'm wondering if there's a way to also measure, how pretty some tiles are versus others. For aesthetic reason, I mean, you can create X, Y, and so on. Would tell you what would be the minimum building blocks of basic pieces that you could then combine to create tiles.
Probably we can do that, but we need to consult an expert in probably graph theory, okay, who does that one, tilings or weaving patterns, okay. So probably concept of algebra then, symmetry, reflections, etc. Ma'am May.
Yeah, great. Nice work. Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr.
Ma'am May.
Hilaw.
Hello, thank you. Interesting work, Dr. Bagani.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm from the computer science, no, and I'm also interested in, STEM, actually the application of, basic foundation, mathematical foundations on, on certain practical domains. So first, you talked about this particular program, no, that you did together with, collaborators for DepEd. And I wonder about, the effect. Have you done some impact studies on about the program on, let's say, the students, no, who underwent this particular training? Were you able to measure the impact on them? Yes.
Actually, so we had this training, and after that, each region also conducted trainings on MIM. Unfortunately, the teachers that I trained, they are not the ones who trained the teachers also in their regions. Rather, they were also one of the participants in the region. So, ang nangyari, ako pa rin ang nag-train dun sa particular region. What I'm referring to is Region 1. Now, the nice thing about this is that they have um, research projects on mathematical investigation. And I'm also in consultation with some experts from our region, members of the Mathematical Society of the Philippines. And starting July or August this year, they will guide or mentor these people, different divisions. So parang may one paper per DepEd division, so mga 11 to 14 divisions, and parang one individual paper, one group paper per division, which will be supervised by this mentor from MSP and also advisor in that division. So hoping we can have an assessment afterwards, Sir Joel. Ang kagandahan lang, at least now, meron na silang awareness about mathematical researches. And meron nga doon gumawa talagang application of mathematics to weaving patterns. Meron ding modeling on parang maximizing bicycle routes, mga ganun. So application ngayon ng modeling. Tapos yung iba, tinatry nilang gumawa ng mga mathematical terminology na related din sa mga names nila. Pero as I said, kailangan hindi lang basta gumawa ng pangalan, na actually, kung titignan mo lang, definition lang pala ng say even number or prime number, etc. But at least they are they are trying. Na? At saka, I saw excellent papers which will be presented in their regional science fair.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bacani. I have a follow-up question to that. So I have this understanding that this particular training program was special, though participants are specially selected. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is your opinion on making this more mainstream into, in the basic education or secondary education? Because I could see the potential of it really helping people having a more mathematical mindset by mere exposure to these kinds of training and problems.
Yes.
But what
But I
about
think
mainstreaming it?
No, after piloting this in the special science program, then DepEd will also do this in regular programs. Okay. So
So
that
hopefully
yes.
this gets pushed through because I could see the real potential in really honing the mathematical abilities of more people.
Yes. Thank you, Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bacani. To award the certificate, we have the Dr. Mata, can you just email or send Dr. Bacani the question? Okay, we need to catch up with our time constraint. So to award the certificate, we have the co-chair of the Rec 10, Dr. Ilaw. Let me share the certificate.
So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Jerico Bacani in grateful acknowledgement for imparting his valuable knowledge and insights as an oral speaker in the 2023 Annual Passing Meeting and Symposium with the theme Reimagining the Training of the 21st Century STEAM Workforce, held from June 26 to July 1, 2023. Signed by Dr. Mariano Santo Domingo and Dr. Senia Tino. Congratulations, Dr. Bacani.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Pasek. Thank you, APAMS.
Okay, for our next speaker, he is an assistant professor of University of Philippines, Los Baños. Without further ado, let's all welcome Mr. Emerson Rico.
Good day, everyone. Can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you to Professor Angeline Lau for the introduction. Good day, everyone. Today, I'm going to present my paper, which is about an optimization model for safe and accessible location of evacuation centers in Taguig City, Philippines. So, this paper is co-authored with Dr. Jo Marabajante, Gerald Tubay, Aileen Lapitan, and Val Randolph Madrin from UPL. So to start, okay, we're going to start with the background. What is Taguig City? What is the problem with Taguig City, Philippines? The objective of the study, methods, results, and finally, the conclusion and some recommendations. Okay, to start, let me introduce to you the Taguig City, which is located at the capital of the Philippines. It is highly urbanized and a densely populated city. Now, the problem with Taguig City is that it is exposed to multiple geologic and hydrometeorological hazards. This hazard includes, we have flooding, rain-induced landslide, active fault, or an active fault traverses directly through the city, ground shaking, which is about earthquake, liquefaction, or the penetration of water beneath the land of Taguig City, and earthquake-induced landslide. Evidently, Taguig City is exposed to multiple natural hazard. Because of this, there is a demand for safe and accessible evacuation centers. However, a study from 2019 found that 32% of evacuation centers in Taguig City are susceptible to flood, and more than 21% are situated within the 1 kilometer hazard zone of the active fault. That's a study from 2019. Actually, there are multiple laws and guidelines available in our from the government. Now there are multiple laws available, and in our literature review, we found that none of the guidelines provide a model for immediate identification of optimal location. They only provide the criteria and minimum requirement, and not the method itself. So they just let the city development planning office to determine where are the optimal location of these evacuation centers, and somehow we don't have this specific method, and there is a need for method. Okay, there are various optimization model available in the literature. However, none of the available model fully conform to official guidelines. As a result, there is a knowledge gap or the need for optimization model that conforms to the available policy. So there is the criteria, there is a minimum requirement, but there is no model available by the guidelines. Also, there are a lot of models that these models does not conform to this criteria. So our objective of study is to formulate a mathematical model for site selection of evacuation centers in Taguig City, Philippines. The model is also designed to conform with the official criteria, data, and related methodologies from Philippine government agencies to make it applicable to all cities and municipalities of the country, not only in just in Taguig cities, but all cities and municipalities in the country. Okay. We have, in order to create the model, we have to identify the criteria for site selection. And according to a memorandum by the Department of Interior and Local Government of the Philippines, as well as the International Organization for Migration under UNICEF, we found out that we have to maximize the service coverage to population at risk. Not just to the population, but we have to prioritize those who are at risk, actual at risk of the natural hazard. Also, while doing this, we want to minimize the exposure of evacuation centers to natural hazard, because we found out that 30% of evacuation centers are exposed to flooding. So we don't want that. We want our evacuation centers to be safe and, of course, accessible. So we want to maximize the route accessibility, meaning people can easily go to our evacuation centers. Finally, we want to minimize the distance between the evacuation sites and critical facilities. These critical facilities are hospitals, cell towers, and markets. For markets for goods and services, for hospitals for medical emergencies, cell towers for communication. We want our evacuation centers to be accessible and near these critical facilities. Because our first objective is to maximize service coverage, population at risk, and we want to prioritize population at risk, we have to somehow devise a method to measure the risk level of our population in Taguig City. That's why we perform a multi-hazard risk assessment. So method that we use here are based on the climate disaster risk assessment by the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board of the Philippines. And according to this method, risk is a function of hazard, vulnerability, adaptive capacity, and population density. So it's a multiplicative model. No? So the higher the hazard, the higher the vulnerability, and the higher the population density, we say that the higher the risk that they are experiencing against the natural disaster. So with that, we're going to collect data for the hazard, for the vulnerability, and for the population. Starting with the hazard, we have various data here coming from all coming from government agencies. The flood hazard, rain-induced landslides, storm surge, ground rupture, ground shaking, liquefaction, landslides, tsunami, and volcanic hazard. So we obtained this data using the Freedom of Information Act from the Philippines. No? And we also obtained the population data from the Philippine Statistics Index, or Philippine Statistics Authority. Okay, now we have a hazard map. And to obtain the hazard index, exposure of a building to a hazard, we use the geographic information system, and we extracted the data using GIS to obtain the hazard level of each building. And of course, because we have multiple hazards, not all hazards are equally dangerous. We use the weighting system of the Housing and Land Use Regulatory. Now, based on the Housing Land Use Regulatory Board, these are the weights that we should use. For example, in flood, the high level of flood, we can see we have a score of 3, which is higher than the score for the high level of liquefaction. Because if you can imagine, liquefaction affects an area in long run and not immediately. Where flood, it can affect the area immediately right after the rain. Okay. And of course, we have to measure the vulnerability and adaptive capacity. Now, vulnerability are those attributes of the population that either protects them or increases the risk to either protect or increase the risk to natural hazards. No? For example, if you have bad wall construction materials in your house, many dependent population, the senior citizens and minors, if there are many informal settlers within the area, low literacy rate or low access to financial assistance, they would be higher. They would given a higher vulnerability index. All this data coming from the Philippine Statistics Authority, from the Population Census 2015, obtained using the Freedom of Information Act. Now, we're going to use this variable as to measure the vulnerability of our population, but we cannot measure directly the vulnerability of our people directly, because that's what we're going to create an index with. So we use the principal component analysis. Now, a principal component analysis commonly used for clustering method in data analysis, but it can also be used for indexing purposes, especially for variables that we cannot measure directly. So we have the measurement of these vulnerability factors, but we cannot measure the vulnerability itself. So we use this method. The good thing about PCA is that it operationalize or create a linear combination of these factors. So the coefficient of this linear combination corresponds to the effect of these factors to this new index. And using simple component analysis, basically creates two new variables, and these variables corresponds to our index. And to get the weight of these two new variables, we're going to measure their eigenvalue. So in the end, we have an index for vulnerability, which is just a linear combination of our factors right here, vulnerabilities factors. Because of that, we have the hazard level of each building in Taguig City. We have the vulnerability and adaptive capacity of each building, and we have the population. of each barangay. And to get the population per building, we just have to divide the population per barangay by the area of the building. With that, we have the risk level of each building in Taguig City. Okay. Now we're going to identify the candidate location for evacuation centers. Based on our consultation with the City Planning and Development Office of Taguig City, evacuation centers should be some covered courts, barangay halls, and public school. Now, ideally, evacuation centers are buildings that with only one purpose, that is for shelters for people who are affected by disasters. However, during the financial constraints of our country, it is common practice that covered courts, barangay halls, and public schools are used as evacuation centers during disasters. So for now, we're going to consider this as our evacuation centers. We use Google Earth and OpenStreetMap to obtain the data for these locations. Now, if you can remember, our first objective in our model is to maximize service coverage at the population of risk. We already have the risk index of each building in Taguig City. However, we are talking about coverage. So the farther the building to an evacuation center should be given the less score in our model. So we have here a decay function. The farther the evacuation center J to demand point I, the lesser the coverage. So the range of this decay function is from 0 to 1. 0 being it is not covered by the evacuation center. The next is we want to minimize the exposure evacuation centers, and we already have the data for that using the multi-hazard risk assessment. We just have to get the exposure level of each evacuation centers. We want to maximize route accessibility. In route accessibility, we're going to talk about the number of road intersection around our evacuation center. So the more road intersection based on our literature review, the higher accessibility that the evacuation center has. And finally, we want to minimize the distance between the evacuation site and critical facilities. Now, here, we measure the distance between all possible evacuation centers and all critical facilities, which include markets, hospitals, and cell towers. And we have a weight for each critical facility. For example, we want to prioritize hospitals because for medical emergency purposes, we can give higher weight to this hospital. Okay. Now we have the coefficient for each objective. We are now ready for model formulation. In the model formulation, if you can see, we have multiple objectives. And to consolidate these multiple objectives, we're going to use goal programming. In goal programming, we aggregate multiple objectives and we give weight to each objective. Now, these weight are obtained using the analytic hierarchy process, which is the subjective getting data, subjective data from our experts, to give weight. And the critical facilities considered are hospital, market, and cell towers. In total, there are 15,445 demand cells in Taguig City, or these demand cells are buildings in Taguig City. No? We rather 50 by 50 meters cell in Taguig City. We divided the Taguig City by 50 by 50 meters and 120 candidate of evacuation centers. Our model here is formulated by this, where this goal programming model, we have to minimize the deviation of our objective from the total deviation of our objectives. Of course, we have different measurement for each objective. So we first normalize this parameters by getting the maximum and minimum value of each parameter. And 1 if we want to maximize the objective, 0 if we want to minimize the objective. Okay. We have here our constraint. The first constraint here you can see is that we're just saying that a building J is, or rather a building I is covered by evacuation center J. If and only if evacuation center J was open, there should be at most 1 coverage of per building, and there should be the total number of evacuation centers should not exceed the maximum number of evacuation centers. which is a parameter set by our government. Also, in our fifth constraints here, we don't want our evacuation center to be exposed to natural hazards beyond the maximum level that we set. So we have here the max DC parameter. Okay. So for the result, there are 23 existing evacuation centers in Taguig City. To allow comparability, the model was set to find the optimal location for 23 evacuation sites. The model was solved using Jerico B in Python, which is a very, very fast optimization program. And the current location of evacuation centers in Taguig City were also analyzed using the same index of the model. So we will going to compare which is better, the current location of evacuation center or the optimal location provided by this model. So the optimal location of evacuation centers in Taguig City, according to the model we have here, as you can see, it is spread, and visually we can see it is near to our active fault node. As a result, result shows that the model solution covers more population at risk, less exposed to natural hazard, more accessible to road, and easier access to critical facilities compared to the actual location of our evacuation centers. No, in order to measure this criteria, we measure the index level of our current location evacuation centers using our model and compare per objective. We can see for all objective, our model outperforms the current location of evacuation centers. Okay, so of course, there is some subjectivity involved in this model because we use the analytic hierarchy process, which is getting the opinion of experts. No, so we perform sensitivity analysis and determine the sensitivity of the model to different parameters. Using ANOVA of regression analysis, we found that the objective weight has significant impact to the result of the model. Remember, we have multiple objectives, and these objectives are weighted depending on their importance, and that weight coming from our expert opinion. So it is very important that we consult our stakeholders and they be sure that that they're given to our model are correct so that we don't skew our results now. Since the parameter was obtained from stakeholders, this means that the result of the model may vary significantly depending on the priorities of the stakeholder. Okay, a multi-objective mixed integer programming model was formulated as a conclusion to determine the optimal location of evacuation centers in Taguig City. When compared to actual evacuation centers, the solution model has better coverage, safer location, greater accessibility, and closer to critical facilities. Of course, using from our sensitivity analysis, careful deliberation must be done to well encompass the interests of all concerned stakeholders. And the model can be used to find the optimal location of evacuation center, not only in Taguig City, but throughout the to any city in the country, because the method that we use conform to all national guidelines that we consulted, not specific to Taguig City. And in future studies, we are looking forward to model can be extended by considering the spatial capacity of evacuation centers. All right. That's all, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. You have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yes, Dr. Mata.
Yeah, very well done. Very well done research. But I'm not sure if you're familiar with location allocation analysis ng ArcGIS. Have you heard that or have you come across that method? So ArcGIS?
ArcGIS, I'm not really sure about that
that analysis
program. I haven't encountered that program.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, because you also did GIS, right? When you were mapping, you
yes,
did
QGIS. I use QGIS.
you use QGIS anyway. But if ever you use ArcGIS, there is such thing as location allocation analysis there. It's quite automated in terms of doing things like similar to what you're doing. And so what I'm thinking is you could somewhat compare your result with the result of location allocation analysis. Yeah, I'm not quite sure ano yung mga allocation or location allocation problem that ArcGIS covers as far as location allocation analysis is concerned, but I think it's useful for comparison. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Marian Mata, for that suggestion.
Dr.
Yes, in response to that, I think I also this was conducted 2 years ago, so I think I remember that I encountered that method. A caveat on the existing method right now, there are actually multiple methods available in the literature and in many applications. But the good thing about this model is that it conforms to the guidelines of the government agencies. So I think I'm not sure if the applications can conform to the guidelines. I can check on that. But it's a very good thing to check if compare the solution if we make solution to both methods. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks. A very excellent presentation, Emerson. I'm really happy that you really did a very comprehensive study on identifying the safe locations for the evacuation center. I'm really interested about the data aspect, the data gathering aspect. So, of course, this wouldn't be possible if you don't have GIS information. So can you share with us your experience in obtaining data, critical data na for this, particularly in trying to populate the GIS?
All right.
Okay.
So I started with learning how to work with QGIS because this is the free version of our application available right now. And I found out that I need hazard maps from various government agencies. So the tedious process here is that if I have to email different government agencies, ask for data, and consolidate this data. And thankfully, they have the data or the appropriate data which is applicable in QGIS. And I just overlay this data, extract this data, and thankfully I was able to get the data that I want. You know, I use this for hazards, for population, as well as dividing the so there are various lessons that I took to online lessons that I took to learn this application because, as you know, we don't have this in our during studies. This is a new thing for me, but I'm very excited and I'm happy that I learned this method. Just the tedious process is getting the data from the government. There's a lot of process to come with.
And then a follow-up, Emerson.
Yes, sir.
Is this data that you've curated available to other researchers?
Data that I created or I
That you
obtained?
curated, that you obtained and then curated, for
Yes,
methods particularly. So is this also free for other researchers to also
Publicly
obtain?
accessible.
Is it publicly accessible? Yes.
Yes, and some data are publicly accessible, such as the population census in 2015 and PSA, but some data are directly obtained from the government agency, and I signed a waiver that I should not disclose this data to other purposes other than the research.
Other than the research, okay. Or maybe we could do some, other researchers so would like to obtain, could
Yes,
probably propose to do a collaboration with your
yes,
office so that the data can be properly handled.
yes, but the
Okay.
government agencies are approachable. If you want to ask for the data, just ask through the
Get it
freedom
from
of
them.
information. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Emerson.
Emerson
you.
kindly also answered the question Dr. Mata posted in the chat, but answer mo na lang sa chat box, no? So to award the certificate, we'll have the co-chair of the Rec 9, Dr. May Lim, to award the certificate of appreciation.
Okay, so this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Emerson R, Rico, MSc in grateful acknowledgement for imparting his valuable knowledge and insights as an oral speaker in the 2023 annual APAMS meeting and symposiums with the theme Reimagining the Training of the 21st Century STEAM Workforce, held from June 26 to July 1, 2023, signed Dr. Mariano Santo Domingo and Dr. Senya Tigni.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, still from the Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Physics of University of the Philippines, Los Baños, our next speaker is Mr. Vijay Ordilio.
Can anyone confirm if they can see my screen or as well as if I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So good day, everyone. I'm Vijay Ordilio from the Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Physics and the Department of Chemical Engineering of the University of the Philippines. So for today's session, please allow me to present to you on behalf of my team our research on probing the surface reactivity of single atom alloys via machine learning aided density functional theory calculations. So to begin, the rapid advancement in information technologies coupled with the growing demand for data-driven approaches has made artificial intelligence and machine learning approaches as off-the-shelf tools for almost all scientific disciplines. More recently, they have found as domicile in chemical and material science domains where structure property relationships remain largely unresolved. But you might ask, why is AI ML only taking off now for chemical and material sciences? There are two key factors for this. First is the emergence of big data for this, and the other one is the accessibility of computing resources. The big data for this pertain to the volume, velocity, veracity, and variety of data generated, while the other one is the accessibility of computing resources as a consequence of modernization, it being an enormous increase in computing speed, but a decreased cost of using such technologies. However, the real gauge for the utility and effectiveness of these types of technologies is on how they can help understand and solve complex real-world problems. One such application is on elucidating the complex phenomena of carbon dioxide reduction reactions on catalyst surfaces. Why are we interested in CO2RR to be specific? In a IPCC's assessment report, it was observed that the world has experienced drastic changes in greenhouse gas emissions due to anthropogenic activities since mid-1900s. These greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxides, are responsible for naturally warming the Earth. However, any excessive amount of these gases can result into more heat trapped in our atmospheres and thereby cause abnormal global temperature changes, and that can be detrimental to all. Among these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide is evidently the largest contributor to the growing problem of global warming, accounting for almost 75% of the global net anthropogenic GHG emissions, with around 85% coming from the fossil fuel and industry fields. So in CO2RR, the goal is to transform carbon dioxide into an environmentally benign and value-added chemicals or products. But this is rather difficult due to the characteristic of carbon dioxide molecule. One being it is chemically stable and relatively inert, and then the other one it being having a broad product distribution upon reduction, as shown in this figure. So how then do we resolve this problem? Luckily, heterogeneous catalysis presents a facile approach towards effective CO2 dissociation as well as selective chemical production. With all the earlier issues considered, we need to trim down the amount of chemical species to be studied, but still capture the essence of CO2RR problem. And this is where the study of Bagger et al. In 2017 comes in very handy. Their study were able to identify two parameter descriptor for CO2RR that markedly resemble experimental validations. In this study, however, pure methods were considered, and with their classification problem being able to isolate copper as the gold standard for CO2RR, they have some drawbacks. They have identified some drawbacks, which are high Faraday over potential as well as poor selectivity. To offset this, we resort to metal alloying. This upper figure is a prototypical example of what a conventional alloy system looks like. They are formed by mixing two or more elements, either substituted, the one in the middle, or substituted or inserted in the interstitial spaces. These types of alloys are currently limited by the scaling relationship involved in reactivity studies, which actually restricts the search space for catalyst design. So to offset these encounters, this one emerging type of alloys that don't adhere to these scaling relationships are what we call the single atom alloys. Unlike conventional alloy systems used for CO2 or R that are typically at equimolar compositions, SAAs are diluted at a single atom unit. And while perusing the literature, we have found out that there are very few studies that tackle about their reactivity and actually applicability for AI and ML explorations. So this then serves as a fertile ground for data-driven approaches to material property prediction for SAAs. One last thing, furthermore, AI/ML strategies in chemical and material sciences problem focuses more on model-centric approaches. This means they try to implement multiple AI/ML models, often black box models, and use high-dimensional feature spaces. And we know that as the number of features increases, model complexity also increases. This then renders models generated to be unreliable and unexplainable. It is then our objective to leverage feature selection techniques to reduce model complexity as well and then increase their interpretability. So as earlier mentioned, this study generally aims to develop an interpretable machine learning model to study reactivity of single atom alloys for potential CO2R applications. We aim to generate a reactivity dataset based from the identified two key intermediates for CO2RR, which are the carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and then featurize them using online and open source databases. Then test various feature selection techniques and machine learning models, and then employ machine learning and model agnostic interpretation methods for ARM-ML models. However, I may be able only tackle the first four objectives since due to time constraints. So for the computational details of our study, for DFT calculation for our surface models, we use a face-centered cubic system structures. Just ignore the A user, but we use FCC low Miller index 111 structures with 4 layers of a 3x3 supercell crystals. Then for this, we considered 8 adsorption sites to represent the different adsorption environments for the catalysts that we are modeling. Then for computation, we use the quantum espresso package with the ultrasoft pseudo potential, and we defined our exchange correlation function as with Rev PB with the van der Waals corrections. For the start of our machine learning approach, we use the featurization considering 86 in total of properties, broadly classified into elemental, electronic, and structural. And then just a little note on this is that we implemented some statistical treatments such as arithmetic, geometric, and weighted means to some features to better represent our single atom alloy surfaces. Then after that, we employed 6 feature selection techniques classified into embedded, dropper, and filter methods. For embedded, we use the lasso and elastic net regression, which are both linear models. And then for wrapper, we use recursive feature elimination and borrow the shop. For filter type of feature selection, we use Pearson's and Spearman's correlations to filter to select a subset of our initial features. From this, we then proceeded with the machine learning with linear models with the embedded type feature selection, and then gradient boosting as the base machine learning model for our filter type as well as wrapper type feature selection method. Then we also employed hyperparameter tuning with random search as compared to the grid search that actually is exhaustive. We use random since the hyperparameter search space is actually large, and we use the random search to minimize the cost for computation. Then model evaluation performance were evaluated with MAE, MS, mean absolute error, mean squared error, root mean squared error, as well as the coefficient of determination R squared. So for results, we have here for embedded laser regression. Embedded laser regression is a variant of a linear regression model wherein we add an L1 norm penalty to our initial minimization problem, our cost function from the OLS, or the ordinary least squares. In here, we try to tune our parameter alpha, which is the one that controls the shrinkage and the feature selection. For our carbon monoxide systems, we were able to reduce our initially 86 number of features to just 9. And it says here that our laser regression for carbon monoxide prediction is actually good for these types of system, having a R square of 0.85 and then low on the other metrics. However, on our laser regression for hydrogen systems, we see here a very low metrics for almost all our metrics, with a 45 R square and then somewhat higher compared to the laser regression with our carbon monoxide. However, the number of features selected with laser regression was still 9 as compared to 86 initially. Then another type of a linear regression model, is what we call the elastic regression, which combines the penalty from ridge regression and ridge penalty as well as the lasso penalty. Here the hyperparameters we used were the alpha and L1 ratio. L1 ratio and alpha controls the amount of shrinkage and subset selection. For this, we were compared to the laser regression, we have a better performance, but the disadvantage of using this method is that the number of features selected is actually quite higher than our initial laser regression. With it selecting 42 features and 39 features for both CO, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen adsorption systems. But upon proceeding with our wrapper type with our gradient boosting regression, we were able to increase the performance of our machine learning models to up to 0.90 and 0.86 for both systems. With gradient boosting regressions, we train our models with weak learners, the average of our weak learners to actually come up with a good machine learning model at the end, where the weak learners are actually informed from its previous weak learners. So we build from that and then build our models from the weak learners. In the Baruta shop, with Baruta shop, we were able to decrease the number of features to just 6 and then 9 for carbon and hydrogen respectively. And comparing our results with the performance metrics of the other two initially mentioned regressions, we were able to come up with R square of 0.90 and 0.86, and there seems to be an consistency between the prediction for both carbon monoxide and hydrogen systems. Similarly, we also use the recursive feature elimination, which iteratively reduces the number of features being considered at each model evaluation with gradient boosting regression. With this case, we were able to reduce the number of features from 86 to 28 and 17 for both CO and H respectively. And there is also a significant increase with our performance metrics when using wrapper-based feature selection techniques. Lastly, we have here a filter type feature selection technique using correlation from statistical analysis. One is the Pearson's correlation, which measures the linear association between the variables. And we were able to have a performance on the test sets at 0.88 and 0.65, having low accuracy on our H systems. It was similar thing was observed from our lasso or the linear regression models. One caveat though, with using filter type of feature selection, we can only reduce our number of features to at least for 30 and 29 for both carbon monoxide and hydrogen systems. And Spearman, unlike the Pearson's correlation, we measure here the monotonic relationship or the association between our variables. And with Spearman's correlation as filter selection, we were able to come up with a performance metric somewhat better than Pearson's correlation, from 0.88 to 0.89 for carbon monoxide and then 65 to 70 for hydrogen, but inconsistent between the two metrics for our reactivity on our single atom alloy surfaces. So as a generalization for this study, we were able to come up with models performing feature selection. And we have found out that embedded type methods tend to underperform for H adsorption energy with actual inconsistency between the carbon monoxide and the hydrogen predictions. For the wrapper type methods, they are actually very relatively slow in terms of computation, but have the best accuracy for both adsorbates considered. Lastly, filter type methods has a tendency to overfit with high training set accuracy but drastic drop in test set accuracy. I'm just going to highlight what we mean by that overfitting. We can see here from the carbon monoxide data set that the training set in red is actually almost linear or close to 1. And then we see the test set here, performance metric at 0.89, which is a drastic drop from our initial trained model. Then consistent with the features selected is the gradient, the GCN and VEM, two features that supports the importance of structural and electronic features to describe SAA systems. The GCN stands for the generalized coordination number. It is a structural feature describing the local environment of the reactivity site, and then as well as the VEM that combines its structural and then electronic properties, the valence electron, mean of the valence electrons in that specific site we considered. Then lastly, we can say that we don't necessarily need to train model with very high number of features to achieve good accuracy. And this work is funded by the Fisher through the project 1012A. Then we would like to thank the DOST ACI for their support with the COAR environment for our computations. Thank you for your attention, and I'm now ready to answer your questions.
Question from the audience? Maybe, I think Dr. Mata.
I think I've seen one from the chat box
Yeah,
from
actually put it
Doc
in the
May.
chat box.
The
So,
one question
just-
from Dr. Mailing was, there seems to be systems that tend to be not amenable to AI, to ML prediction. Have you ever identified features of these systems? Most of the features eliminated were actually elemental properties once we get from the readily available from the periodic table. And for the feature importance analysis, that's actually the next part of our study, which I have not mentioned, but we were able to check the feature importance of the features selected. And then we would also like to check why certain features were eliminated as well.
Can you also quickly answer Dr. Mata's question?
Okay, from Dr. Mia, not sure what you did for splitting data, but did you do train test split or train validate? We use the train validate test split, mom. First, we train test split with the 80 to 20 split ratio, and then cross validated was included with the machine learning algorithm we use with sklearn.
Okay, thank you. To award the certificate, we have again Dr. Ilaw.
Okay, this certificate of appreciation is awarded to VJ Z. Ordilio in grateful acknowledgement for imparting his valuable knowledge and insights as an oral speaker in the 2023 annual PAASE meeting and symposium with the theme Reimagining the Training of the 21st Century STEAM Workforce, held from June 26 to July 1, 2023, signed by Dr. Mario Santo Domingo, PAASE President, and Dr. Sinia Tino, the 43rd APAMS co-convener. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
For our last speaker, we have Mr. Paul Cesar Flores, who's currently, I think, a PhD student at Yokohama National University. Paul?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, share screen po muna ako. Kita na po ba yung screen?
Yes, but not yet in presentation mode.
Okay.
Okay, now.
So, good afternoon na ba? Good afternoon, everyone. So today I will be sharing to you this project that I started with my friends. So just to clarify, this is not related to any of our current work institutions. This is a passion project. So, and this is completely different to what I'm doing for my PhD. For my PhD, I am studying the structural characteristics of the tectonic plate boundary and how it correlates with earthquakes. But for in this presentation, I will be sharing some insights about science communication from our channel, and which focuses on marine and earth science. So in this channel, we generally upload videos discussing the findings of studies conducted in the Philippines. So we focus on peer-reviewed studies rather than general topics on geology and oceanography, because there is already a large amount of videos available online discussing these topics that are also discussed in introductory courses. So here we focus on peer-reviewed studies. And basically, the goal of the channel is to promoting these studies, because we believe that Filipinos should be knowledgeable about geology and oceanography because of the geohazards that we experience. And also we are composed of more than 7,000 islands. We are the center of marine biodiversity in the world. And so we have the longest coastlines and so on and so on. So, and we hope that through our channel, we can inspire the next generation of Filipino geologists and oceanographers. So just a brief history. I created the channel on January 17, 2022, last year. And then the first video was uploaded on January 26. And then I renamed the channel on June 2, 2022. Then on October, I created the YouTube channel. So we are now active on Facebook and YouTube. And then the Facebook page was renamed again. And then Denise joined as the graphic artist of the team. And then on May 6, we finally reached 1,000 followers. So for a long time, it was just me creating the content. And then on June 1, we announced 3 more lecturers. Jam, Keith, and Pin joined the channel as lecturers. And currently, the growth was pretty fast, I think. We are now at 1,600 followers since May 6. So roughly almost 2 months. 2 months after we reach the 1,000 follower milestone. And over time, the videos we uploaded kind of changed. Like the way we presented the videos changed over time. So between January 2022 to October 2022, the videos were mostly less than 3 minutes long, and it has an English voice that is AI generated, and it has a storytelling approach to explain the study, and it has high amounts of visual effects. Like there's a lot of stock footage being used, and also some transitions between frames, and also some graphic motion stuff happening on the video. And then on January this year, I tried to transition into making the videos using a Filipino voice and a longer video. But the big change here was that these videos are are PowerPoint lectures. So it's kind of like a conference type presentation. So I recorded the video as similar to a conference type presentation and then uploaded it on the channel. And during phase 1 and phase 2, the uploads were very irregular because it was just me making the content, and I was just doing this whenever I have free time. And then starting this month, in June 1, we are now uploading one video every Thursday. So tomorrow there will be another video uploaded on the channel if you want to check it out. So currently the videos are generally less than 10 minutes long, and again we discuss the studies in Filipino, and it has a storytelling approach. But the difference between phase 1 and phase 3 is that in phase 3, it's more of like us speaking in front of the camera, and then just whenever we want to point out something on the paper, the figure just comes up on the screen. So in terms of the amount of visual effects, there is still high amounts of visual effects during phase 1 compared to phase 3. So now we wanted to see what did our viewers prefer. And we looked at the data analytics provided by Facebook through the Meta Business Suite, and we looked at the impressions, views, and total watch time. We were not able to take into account the number of followers over time because Facebook is such a weird platform. It gives a different count for the number of page likes and number of page followers. And then what happens is if you like the page, you automatically become a follower. But if you are a follower, you do not automatically like the page. And then the Meta Business Suite only provides the number of page likes over time, but it does not provide the number of followers over time. So yeah, it's quite weird, and we are trying to figure out for now how we can incorporate it in our analysis. So we only focused on these 3 variables to calculate the view rate, like the number of views divided by the number of impressions. So the impressions is the number of times the post appeared on somebody's screen. And the views, 1 view is counted if the person watched the video for at least 3 seconds. And then this gives us information if people are interested on that video, and then we look at this metric to see if people are watching our video. Like if they watch the video and then just scroll down else somewhere after watching a few seconds, or they watch the video until the end. And then we just used k-means clustering. And here we can see there should be 3 optimum clusters, and this is it. This is just how it looks like. And so let's just look at the values. So cluster 1 has a low interest from viewers and low viewer retention. Cluster 2, it has moderate interest, but it has the highest viewer retention. And then cluster 3, it has the highest interest, but the lowest viewer retention. So let's take a look what these videos were about. So cluster 1 are generally from videos during the phase 1, or generally the first 6 videos from the channel. And I guess this is not surprising because when you start the channel, nobody really knows you. So they don't care about what you upload and what you are discussing on the channel. And maybe there are still doubts on whether they should believe you or not. So maybe, yeah. So this is not surprising. The low interest and low retention during the initial stage, during the initial stages of the channel. So cluster 2 is still from videos from phase 1. And during this time, we started to partner with student organizations to share our videos. And I think, or we think, that is probably the main reason why we have high retention time we have high retention time in this cluster because our target audience that time were students, probably. Our target audience are students, preferably college students taking geology or marine science courses, or senior high school students that are interested into science. So when we partnered with these student organizations, maybe they got interested in the channel and started watching our videos, and probably this contributed to the high retention time. And also the videos were quite short during that time, less than 3 minutes. And cluster 3 are videos from phase 2 and phase 3. So we have high viewer interest, probably because we now have an increase in the number of followers, and Facebook is slowly, the Facebook algorithm is slowly pushing our content to a broader audience. Because the audience becomes broader over time, it's not just students anymore. So maybe there are, so probably they have preferences when it comes to the style of the video presentation. And this affects the retention time on our videos. And also maybe the length of the video has an effect to it as well. And so probably the best solution for this is to adopt the style that we used from phase 1, where we have high amounts of visual effects instead of just us facing the camera and discussing what the study is all about. So these are just the takeaways. So over time, we have an increased viewer interest, but this does not automatically translate to higher retention time on our videos. And second, there is untapped potential for science communication videos using a Filipino voice, because I think the Filipino audience appreciates it more when you explain the science to them in Filipino rather than English. Because when you explain it to them in Filipino, it sort of becomes more simplified and they can understand it better. And also, the video style definitely has an effect to it. And probably we should change our style in the future to make it more engaging to the viewers, to make it engaging to a much broader audience that may or may not be very interested to science, so that we can have higher retention time on our videos. Yes, so I guess that's it. Just a very short presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Question from the audience. Maybe we'll take 1 or 2. Yes, Dr. Lim.
Yes, really cool stuff, Paul. So I'm wondering, have you also considered having, nakuha mo na si Facebook, YouTube, also a Twitter thread? Because there's some advantage to Twitter that people who cannot watch videos can actually read your threads at the same time.
Yes. Actually, I tried to do Twitter before, But unfortunately, during that time, it was just me creating all the content. So it's kind of exhausting to upload on Facebook, YouTube, and then Twitter, because each platform has a different. It feels like each platform has a different technique so that you get more followers. So you need to. It's kind of like writing to a specific audience. Like, for example, your audience from Facebook has a certain way of they have a certain, how to say, you need to write the caption in a certain way such that the viewers from Facebook are interested to it. And then on YouTube, you need to write the caption in a certain way such that um you you are optimized such that it is SEO optimized. And then on Twitter, you also need to write it in a certain way such that that thread is interesting for the viewers. So during that time, it was exhausting for me. So I deleted the Twitter account and just focused on Facebook and YouTube for now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, this is a very interesting talk for a lot of us. I think we all dream of creating also our own channel, but I think the challenge there is always the time, no, to do that and the dedication to do that. Paul, there's also a question in the chat box. Maybe you can answer it later, and maybe for the last question, let's have Dr. Ilaw.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting, as the Dr. Angie Lau said. Everyone, all of us are dreaming to have this kind of very successful channel. No? I also, as a follow-up to Dr. Lim's question, you might want to also consider another channel, the podcasts.
Yes.
So actually, I think it's more doable because the podcast, it's like a conversational type. Now you could invite people to talk about their particular research. So and then you could do it as a forum, no, where different people could give their own opinions on certain topics of interest. So I think that's also a good channel
Yes.
by which you could and it's also, I think, more manageable.
Yes.
Just have to,
Actually,
have
we
the good
are
connector. Sorry.
yes.
Okay.
Actually, we are already planning on that because the UP Diliman CS team on Science Communication reached out to us if we can make co-branded content. So we are on initial talks with them on making that podcast. So hopefully hopefully it comes into fruition so we can launch a we can launch a podcast, hopefully.
Interesting. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, due to time constraint, we're actually over time. So let's again have Dr. Lim to award the Certificate of Appreciation to Paul.
All right. So this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Paul Cesar M. Flores in grateful acknowledgement for imparting his valuable knowledge and insights as an oral speaker in the 2023 annual PASM meeting and symposium with the theme Reimagining the Training of the 21st Century STEAM Workforce, held from June 26 to July 1, 2023, signed by Dr. Mariano Santo Domingo and Dr. Senya Tigno.
Okay, let's have a group picture before we all leave this Zoom meeting. Let me, okay. If you're able to open your camera, then kindly open it. If not, then some of you already have some pictures. We can also use that as as a picture. Okay, since recorded naman to, I will not take a screenshot. I will just ask you to smile, no? Then I'll take the screenshot later. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
everyone.
You look, check the book of abstract and attend the other sessions, no parallel sessions, no interested parallel sessions. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Doc Angie. Thanks, everyone. Happy lunch.
Thanks, Dr. Angie.